Love, love, love is the answer. Love is the answer. Love is the way. Love, love, love is the answer. Love is the answer. Love is the way.
Thank you, David. That's wonderful.
The best answer.
Well, amazing. I'm sure you're surprised. I'm going to talk about mothers. But you see, I don't always like to do that, oh, everything's wonderful mother talk. So I thought, well, what can I do that will address mothers and yet allow it to be a fuller experience? And I thought, mothers in the Bible. Who are the mothers in the Bible anyway? Who are those mothers that make a big difference? And so it's really been a fun talk for me to prepare for, because I had the opportunity to do a little exploration, find which mothers made a big difference. And one of the things you'll notice is that most of these mothers are the mothers of men who made a difference in the Bible. Now, I will tell you that, but it does not diminish the truth of these women and what they brought into the lives of the men that they birthed. So please be aware of that, because indeed there is a great amount of support for the men that they birthed, and it doesn't diminish the women. I mean, yes, it doesn't diminish the women. So as we embark on this journey, we're going to start with, who do y'all think will be the first mother?
Mary.
Wrong. Let's go the other way. We're going to talk about Eve, because Eve was the very first mother. She was the very first mother. She was the very first wife. She was the very first woman. She was the first. And she is closely identified with elementary life. She's the absolute God. She's that very basic expression of God as mother. So we have an opportunity to recognize that, yes, she had flaws. Yes, she made mistakes. And yet she birthed children. And she also was the first mother to grieve, to lose her children and grieve, or to have conflict with children and grieve. So she's a mother to all of us, and she embraces divine life. And so we too can recognize that while she was not perfect and she didn't do it the way we would all have thought might been possible, so it is with mothers in humanity, is they're doing the best they can, and they may not get it all right, but they're all right. And then we have Sarah. Sarah's an interesting person. She is the mother of Isaac. And metaphysically, she has an important lesson for all of us who are growing in faith and seeking to bring the fruits of Spirit. So she is about divine law and following it, even in the times that it appears things are not going her way. You see, she really wanted a child. And, okay, ladies, so she was 90 years old when she had a child. She was 90 years old, and she was excited to have this child. She represents spirituality in woman. She represents the soul, that intuitive place within us where we allow ourselves to be guided by the still small voice. Because that's what Isaac means, is following the still. I'm sorry, that was Simon, so just disregard that. So she's the mother of Isaac, and she is willing to do all that is. She can obey. She's willing to recognize God as the source. Then we have Rebecca. Rebecca is an interesting thing. She is the mother of Jacob and Isaac, and she too had difficulty conceiving. There might be a pattern here. I'm not quite sure. But she's about beauty and grace. And you know, her husband, well, he wanted a child and he wanted it right away. And he wasn't willing to wait. So he had a child with one of the servants. But she wasn't willing to say that God would not provide. She believed strongly, and she would not let go of that belief and that faith. She was beautiful, she was attracted to beauty, and she was about going forth, holding God in the highest. She was about holding God in God's plan and reminding us that there is a transformative power. And that transformative power is there as we have faith, as we hold to the faith. Anybody here ever have difficulty holding to faith? And you want it when you want it and you want it? You know, I find myself wanting things, have very little patience evidently, because if I want something, I want it now. And I don't want to have to wait. I don't want to have to plan to hold the high watch and to believe that in truth there is only good and only grace. I want it to happen for me right this moment, always. And yet Rebecca did not for a moment give up hope. She did not give up hope. Now she did, and she may have been the first to create a little sibling jealousy, because her first son, well, she liked her second son best. And this created a little, she had twins. And Jacob was the very first one, and Esau was the second, and she liked Esau best. And so since there was going to be a decision of who would receive all the goods, she created a devious plan to convince that Esau was number one by putting some fur on him. Not sure how all that worked, but so she created these problems. And they had problems for a long time, but they did finally come back together in love. And so one of the things you might start to notice in here is that there's a lot of love. There's love that keeps coming around. There's harmony that comes around in these relationships. And there is women who, regardless of what's going on around them, say, I believe, and I will stay fast in my belief. And maybe that's what we have as women, is a real strong sense of belief, a firm belief, and a willingness to go past that appears otherwise, to experience life as we believe it to be. Jochebed. She is the mother of Moses. Now she's an interesting one because she so loved her son that she put him in a basket and put him in the reeds. She was so convinced that he was about God. She was so willing to honor the I am that she felt he represented, that she put him in a basket. Now, she had a daughter, and her daughter Miriam saw that her brother Moses in the basket was picked up by the princess and taken back to the palace. And she went to them and she said, oh, how about if my mother becomes the maid to this man, this baby, this child? And so they allowed it. So here she had her baby back and was able to raise the child, knowing the importance of this I am power, knowing that he had some important things to do. So again, you see how we're talking about the women and how they support the men, but you see how important the women are. There's this strength that lifts up the spiritual power. And this is important for you to know, because every one of you have the Divine Mother in you. Each and every one of you have Divine Mother in you. And for those of you who kind of shudder over that, I invite you to breathe and to think about a time that you were soft and gentle to somebody. Sometime that you had to feed a child or change a child or hug a child when they were hurt or crying. You see, you guys have that divine feminine, that divine mother that is about love. You see, this is Divine Mother up here, and what we know is, somebody told me to be sure and point out dog, but Divine Mother represents love. And that's what we're talking about here. All of these women in the Bible represent some part of all humankind. You know, all the stories in the Bible are about us, right? Y'all know that? When we look at the Bible metaphysically, we're talking about ourselves. And I've had people say, oh no, I don't war, I don't fight, And I go, really? So do you ever have conflict in your head? Maybe you don't take an arrow out or a slingshot out, but do you ever go into that conflict in your head, back and forth? That's that place that we are experiencing these stories of ourselves. So I invite you to reread the Bible, especially those stories that you haven't enjoyed or that you felt were violent or had nothing to do with you, and say, wow, let me see metaphysically, is there some piece here that speaks to me? Is there some piece here that makes a difference to me today? Because the Bible is relevant today. And I'll be the first to say I struggle with the Old Testament, as many of us struggle with the Old Testament. But when I started to reread those stories with new eyes, I saw how, yes, there might be something there for me. So Jochebed, she was a woman who had faith. She trusted. She knew who the Christ I am was, and she was willing to do everything she could to ensure that he was okay. And so it turns that Moses is the one that led the Hebrews out of slavery. He was an important part of the history of the Hebrew people. And so let's just think for a moment about ourselves. When did we have to lead ourselves out of slavery? Just looking at that I was talking about in the Bible. Has there ever been a time that you had to be strong and support that I am and take yourself out of slavery? I have. So Jochebed represents faith. She represents persistence. She represents that place that is able to carry forth. And not only does she represent all that, she was 130 years old when she had Moses. 130, so they say in the Bible. That just means she was very old. That's what that means, is she was old. But what was interesting was when she went through this, she was restored to beauty. Now we're all going to run out and have a child, right? If we can be restored to beauty. According to the Bible, she was restored to beauty. And I think that every mother is restored to beauty when she looks at her child and sees the love that's there. It's pretty hard not to be beautiful in the eyes of a child. Next, we have Hannah. Hannah is the mother of Solomon. She represents the soul because of its high aspirations, its concentration, I can't say that right now, to God, and earnest prayer. She is established in divine grace and favor. So she's established in divine grace. She's that one that teaches us we can relax and know that grace is active, knowing that there is divine favor in all of us. You know, God is for us. God is on our side. If we feel like God is not, it's because we failed to listen. So she had Samuel, and the thing about Samuel is he's the one that went into the silence, and in the silence, he heard the call. He heard the Lord calling him. Now, he didn't think it was the Lord, and he went and he said, "Here I am. Here I am." And his teacher said, No. That's not me calling you. That is the Lord calling you. And he said, "Here I am, Lord, use me. Here I am." So Hannah was an important mother in this, that she taught her son to love so much that he could say, "Here I am." Whatever is needed. Are you willing to say, "Here I am"? Whatever is needed. Are you willing to sit in the silence, to listen, and then say yes? Because I can tell you I'm willing to sit in the silence. I'm willing to listen. And maybe half the time I say yes. And the other half the time I say, anything but that. Anything but that, please. And I keep butting up against it until I have to say yes. I'm not always the fastest study in the book. But here we have this man who says, "Here I am, Lord." And I cannot help but believe that it had much to do with his mom and her conviction to God and her earnest prayer and her willingness to stay true to the course. Everybody know Elizabeth? Yeah? Elizabeth is the mother of John the Baptist. She is the soul in the feminine or love consciousness. She's an easy one to love. We know that when she saw Mary and heard Mary's voice, John the Baptist leapt in her belly. And she was so excited about the whole process because she knew something big was happening. She was steadfast in her love. She was steadfast in her commitment to do what was hers to do. And I feel like I'm saying that a lot. Oh, again, I'm saying that about mothers. They're steadfast. They're convicted. They're willing to do what they need to do for their children. This is the divine mother that we're speaking of. The divine mother. That even if they make mistakes, as Eve did, they're willing to show up. They're willing to show up in hope, in love, in trust, in faith. And that divine mother lives in you and lives in me. Do you feel that? Are you willing to feel your sense of conviction, your sense of faith, your sense of willingness to listen and to follow guidance? I am most of the time. Not all the time, most of the time. So Elizabeth was a worshiper of God. She was about 88 years old, so they say, when John was born. She had been barren, and she had the miraculous promise that a son would be born, and she was told to name him John. Thus she did. Gabriel was the one that promised Elizabeth this son, and she conceived a short time thereafter. So again, she represents that divine consciousness of love. And who do we have next? Y'all got it right off. Mary, mother of Jesus. She's quite the woman. She was a virgin mother. She represents metaphysically, so we don't know if this is true or not about her being a virgin, but we do know that she was a young maiden and that she represents the purity of mind. She has that place within her that she knows that all is well. She's pure in spirit, in mind, in belief. She doesn't question or doubt. She believes the angels when they say, you are going to have a child and it's all right. She ponders spiritual things. She believes in the truth. She believes that Jesus is being born for a reason. She's willing to be humble and she's willing to be obedient. She's willing to follow that is to be done. She was chosen by God in the story. Chosen by God. These stories are our stories. So you too have been chosen to be you. You've been chosen to be you, not me, not the person sitting next to you. You've been chosen to be you, the best you can be. Mary was chosen. She was chosen to be the mother of Jesus. She was a young mother, unlike the older mothers. She was a young mother, and if you can imagine how she must have wondered that awesomeness that she expressed, as we all have the opportunity to go forth every day and be awed, to be awed by creation, to be awed by the stars, to be awed by the flowers, to be awed by a child, a baby. It represents that place within us that we are awed and that we believe. We are humble. It's a very powerful place to be. And if you can imagine how young she was. And she was willing to embrace that divine calling. She was willing to do what was hers to do. She was willing to bring this gift to all of humanity, not even understanding what it was all about, but she was willing. How many times are you given something and you go, I don't understand it. I'm willing, but I need to understand. She was willing. So we have an opportunity to be willing, even in those times we don't understand. She surrendered to God's will. She allowed herself to be in this place of loving and caring for a child, even though he was considered a problem maker, a troublemaker, and yet she followed him, knowing that he was making a difference, knowing that he was important. She is said to be intuition. We like to call on that energy of Mother Mary for the intuition, don't we? I love that intuition. There's nothing I'd rather follow than my intuition. Of course, I question whether it's my will or God's will, but that's my humanity. That's just my humanity. When I listen and I follow and I experience truth, it's very rewarding, as I'm sure that it was for Mother Mary. So, in conclusion, what I want to say is that let us rejoice in inspiring mothers everywhere, and whatever level, and especially the inspiring mothers in the Bible, for they do have stories for us. They do have ways of living that can support us and lift us in energy and light. We can remember that as these mothers entrusted their lives to live God's will, so we too can find that strength, that power to move us forward. We can find that strength and that power to lift us in divine love, to allow us to love that deeply. And so we give thanks, and we know that all is well right here, right now, in these mothers that we know in the Bible, just as we know our earthly mothers, as we know our friends that are mothers. We celebrate mothers in each one of you. So it is, and namaste.